Since I launched this channel years ago, so many autistic, ADHD, and AuDHD adults have told me the same story in my comments. They're masking their way through the workday, struggling with the decision about whether or not to disclose at work, and everyone seems to be building their own system for work. And a lot of people talk about how they perform well enough throughout the workday that no one really realizes how draining and exhausted they are by the end of the week and how much they use their weekends to just recover so that they can do it all over again. But now we have data to back up what anecdotally people have been saying for years. And that data can now help our workplace become better for the neurodivergent experience. Hi, I'm Brett the Audi Boss, and on this channel we talk about ADHD and autism in the workplace. I have over 12 years leadership training and experience and a formal diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Next for Autism is a national nonprofit that designs and supports programs for autistic adults. They just released Inside the Autistic Workforce, a national survey of autistic and AuDHD adults working across the country and in a range of professions. And their research has hard data on what we've been talking about online for years. Here are just some of the highlights. 79% of autistic employees report masking and emotional exhaustion as a challenge. Nearly 7 in 10 are building their own support systems outside of work, on their own time, and on their own expense. 73% have disclosed in some form, but the single most important variable in that disclosure was their relationship with their direct supervisor. And over 40% of those surveyed identified as AuDHD. To get more information and get into the weeds about the survey, I'm talking with Candi Weaver-Dowds, Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives, and Abigayle Jayroe, SVP of Strategic Operations, both from Next for Autism. Now be sure to stick around for information on Next for Autism's grants programs for nonprofits serving autistic adults. There's an important deadline coming up that you don't want to miss. But for now, we're going to start this conversation. Candi's going to kick us off by talking about how the study focused on a strengths-based approach.
Hearing all of these comments, or hearing all of these, anecdotal things about experience, my own experience. So we wanted to kind of look at what is working. A lot of the studies focus on the deficit side, but we wanted to see what is actually working to then try to find either partners or collaborate with people to kind of create that systems change, right? Like we know that systems are just not built for us. So it was really 3-phase. And we focused really on those who are currently working, recently employed within the last 2 years, or actively job searching, again, within the last 18 months to 24 months. So yeah, I think really the core question for us was really what actually helps people not just get a job, but stay in one.
Yeah, that came through very clear in the data, is the critical part of the systems once were employed in particular. Job satisfaction was fairly high, but that didn't come easily for a lot of people, that there were a lot of issues that people faced along the way.
Yeah. And actually that's the crux of our trying to write the report and everything, is because we did have some fairly positive numbers, but when you look down in the sub-data, when you looked a little bit deeper, you do see that struggle. These individuals that responded, this isn't their first job. They've gotten there by determination, by burnout, by a lot of different things. So it's very clear that, there are people who are doing very well, but it's also very costly. What we heard mostly was daily challenges around, sensory overloading, having a mask, and that emotional exhaustion. It's not really just the occasional bad day. It's these are the conditions of the workplace itself. And for us, being misread is really common. Thinking that we're rude or sarcastic or just trying to be, that person, when it's not. It's just how our brain works and how we're trying to communicate.
Yeah. I liked how the study sort of phrases it, that a strong performance doesn't necessarily mean that the environment is working for us.
Exactly.
How are our strengths competing in the workplace with our need for self-protection?
I think the question is, how aren't they? But
yeah,
our strengths are really real, and it's well documented. The attention to detail, the hyper focus, pattern recognition. That's all empirically represented, right? These really aren't just kind of nice to have. They really translate into organizational value and things. But really the tension comes with how we live it, right? So our data showed like 80% of autistic employees are masking at work. And most of that found it extremely exhausting, and they're doing it all the time, really, like the forced eye contact, the suppressing stimming, over preparing, I'm rehearsing conversations in my mind. I'm trying to look at all of these things. And so when it was reported, we were able to look at what exactly those costs were. And it's not minor inconvenience, which some people may think. It's really not. It's ultimately a second job that you're running in the background all the time. That kind of self-protection, that masking, it really draws from the exact same cognitive and emotional reserves that produce those strengths that employers are counting on.
Right. So you hire someone because of these strengths, and then the workplace doesn't allow them to show those strengths to the fullest potentially. So it's kind of like a catch-22 in some respects.
Yeah, it sort of feels like, you have a battery that's at 50% because the other 50% is constantly being drained down. You can never get fully charged up in the workplace because of all this stuff that we are running in the background all the time. And that's just sort of what's helpful about the survey is it sort of puts a specific number to that in the data responses from the survey participants, which I think is so helpful when we talk to managers and we talk to workplaces about the need for a better work environment. And to that specific point, the survey reports that how critically important the relationship is with the direct supervisor, this direct manager specifically. Why is that relationship, or how did that relationship come through as being so critically important in the survey?
There was a really high rate of disclosure that was like shocking. We had to pause and think about it and talk through it quite a bit. But within that disclosure, a majority of people were disclosing to their managers. So that was really the relationship we wanted to explore more deeply. And another interesting point with the managers was the trust factor. So not only did the employee trust their manager, which led to the disclosure, but the manager trusted the employee, which I just thought was really beautiful and made a lot of sense, right? Like it's a reciprocal relationship and you develop it over time. And it kind of makes sense that once this trust is underway, that it would lead to disclosure and then potentially more supports in an ideal world.
Yeah, I think the data point with 73% have, in some capacity, have disclosed in the workplace, which was a much higher number than I was anticipating the report to say. So is it sort of feeling like is the data telling us that people are feeling a little bit safer in the workplace than maybe we previously understood?
I think we have to be careful about, always doing generalities, but of the ones that we had surveyed and that responded, they did feel that, some sort of comfort, some sort of psychological safety to do that. But in another data point that we had, 92% also felt that there was a real concern about disclosing. So even though they were doing it, there's still a real almost fear about doing that, and it's that being stereotyped. It's, worried about career impact. If I tell somebody I'm autistic, will I be able to advance in my career? Will I be able to do the things? Will I get put on this project? Or maybe we just don't, we're left out of some of the conversations that we need to be. It's like, they could be a little bit, they could take this a little bit funny. So we don't want to bring them into this conversation and then, surprise them with something.
Abigayle, what was it? What did you find was sort of that trust factor in the relationship with the managers? Did anything kind of come through in the data there?
The big finding there was like the manager being open about themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was maybe more anecdotal pieces of data that was like my manager has shared things about their own life or about their own family that alluded to that they would be open to me discussing this with them. I don't know that it was actually like a quant. That might have been more of a qual finding, but I do think that, it makes a lot of sense, right? If someone is sharing their life with you a little bit, you might be like, oh, I feel comfortable doing the same back.
I think what we can take from it is that people really want to be understood, and that being neurodivergent, autistic, that's such a big part of who you are, that being able to bring that and be, taking that risk of, I want to be understood for who I am, and I want to bring my authentic self. I think that's really what kind of drives it for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's really what gives us that psychological safety to stay in that specific job or with that manager in particular. When it came to accommodations, you found that organizations really weren't making their support systems visible. What did you learn there?
We won't say the company, but it was a company we knew had a very big program with lots of supports. At least that was our external understanding of it. And this person had no idea that any of that existed. And we were like, this is very interesting. Didn't know what accommodations were available, how to ask for accommodations.
If they could.
Yeah.
What the repercussions, like what even the process would be. So that was disappointing, to say the least, but not shocking, I guess.
Yeah. I'll editorialize that in my years of corporate, I often found that it was a real big mystery behind what the actual accommodation process was without formally taking the step to ask for an accommodation. It was only at that point that you would discover what it was or wasn't. But once you've put yourself out there, it's kind of too late. And I've sort of, again, from my comment section on different videos, that's sort of what I hear is sort of the norm. So it is actually quite helpful to have the survey data back that up.
They're not going to HR really. Like that's like the least person that they're going to try to get those accommodations. They're looking at their peers, they're looking at their manager again, and another part of the manager relationship. Going to different sources, AI, that's a huge one now, and going to different, podcasts and articles and things.
Well, that's something I wanted to touch on as well, is that the survey data shows that there's a lot of support systems that people are creating on their own. Now, you noted it there, AI and social media being two of the biggest that came through in the survey data. What's happening there? What's that telling us?
To me, it's telling us that businesses need to step up. I mean, it shouldn't be on the employee to have to, it was at 7 out of 10 employees were building their own support systems outside of the workplace. At their own cost, at their own, that takes time, that takes money. And really, if the employer could be, once again, just getting so much out of their employees if they were more active in the workplace and providing that.
We're always going to kind of build our own scaffolding. We're always going to build our own kind of support, whether it be, home, therapists, whatever. But having that support in where you work just kind of takes another, it's just another step that you can have, that you don't necessarily have to lose that mental capacity to try to build that resource. It's just already there, and then you can build from there.
Now, another data point that I think anecdotally we've known through online discourse and everything, that autistic women in particular are shouldering more, and particularly having to mask more. What is the data telling us for autistic women?
The disparities are really consistent across like every measure. Someone who's in this sectionality, it's not surprising. And it's kind of sometimes really hard to sit with, right? Like autistic women report higher rates of sensory overload, more exhaustion, more masking, more difficulty with those sudden changes. The job search particularly was pretty powerful, very overwhelming, frustrating, discouraging, getting turned down over and over and over. And they're really, I think it was 3 times more likely than men to be unsure about whether to disclose. So for, burdening that. And their fears when they do are a lot higher. Like 48% are worrying about being stereotyped, being, passed over for leadership. That's a huge one. That was a really big finding. On the flip side, the men are reporting much more clarity on career advancement. They have a better pathway. I think women in general still have inequities in the workplace, and this just really kind of compounds it.
We have a surge of late diagnosis because we've gotten so much more resources. We've gotten so much better data like this happening for a lot of us. So how is more late diagnosis changing work for us?
We already know there's also the service cliff, right? So at 21, supports end across the board.
Yeah.
And when you get that late diagnosis, there's not a lot of options for you to seek support. I also think people who get diagnosed earlier in life have opportunity to skill build throughout school, right? They're learn how to what's available to them. They maybe practice advocacy as part of their IEP. So those are opportunities, and in an ideal world, right? Those are opportunities for them. Whereas when you're talking about later diagnosed, they don't have that toolkit in place, and they don't have a place to build the toolkit. And there also might be some stigma depending on what age you are when you're diagnosed as well. What was school like when you grew up, and how was autism discussed in school? Or was it at all? So I think those are all kind of factors in how it's impacting that population.
Yeah. Again, touching back to why so many of us create our own support systems, for all of those reasons and more. Yeah. And your data reports also that 40% of the survey participants identified as AuDHD, which was sort of the biggest sort of self-reporting data point, for the largest group of people. How has, our AuDHD workplace strain become more prevalent?
Looking at the profile of AuDHD, they're two, almost like two operating systems that compete with each other at different times. And it's like, you want to be routinized, but that gets boring. So then you want to go, look at a tree or something. But I think it really lends itself to higher rates of sensory overload, more difficult with kind of those social dynamics, even though there's already so much, problems with that. Sudden changes I know for my brain can really throw me off if it's like I had expected to do something and I have to go and kind of shift. And I mean, that's just the nature of work sometimes. And I think our data really showed that they have a more negative disclosure experience. They're less likely to request accommodations at all. And we know in our sample, I think we had more women in this group, and they tend to be much more recently diagnosed. And kind of going back to that recently diagnosed, it's like they don't know what to do. There's like this grieving process almost, or this like, oh, my whole life has been a lie, or not a lie, but like I'm learning about myself again. And that unmasking process is very complicated and it's very difficult. And it's, why can't I do this that I used to be able to do no problem, but now I'm really struggling with it. So, and not very well understood. We're in the data, in the clinical data, we're still figuring that out. We're still learning, from lived experience. We're learning a lot of things. It just kind of all compounds upon itself. And it just really makes it clear that kind of a generic approach to neurodiversity really isn't going to really reach this population, because it's so unique, and it needs different things on different days. It's going to look different depending on, what you wake up with.
Those of us who have AuDHD, we sort of swim in that information, as we kind of, as you noted, Candi, we kind of grieve through the process, and now we're sort of getting our owner's manual and trying to figure out how to exist in the world. But it doesn't feel as though workplaces, if it feels as though workplaces are just starting to understand ADHD and autism in the workplace, but they haven't conceptually got a clue about AuDHD in the workplace at all. And I feel to some degree, the survey data, that you have gone through here sort of reflects a little bit about that. So based on this data and what we're starting to learn, what kind of actions do workplaces need to start moving towards?
The idea behind this was to pinpoint what's working or where we're lacking. And Next is in a really interesting position because we have a national grants program. So now we have a better idea of where to invest some dollars, right? This is what the need is, or this is what's working. So that's a lever for us to pull. We also are doing a program where we're connecting organizations to build free resources, host webinars. And this is sort of directing some of the topics around that. But I think, my take on it, there's a million and one things. And Candi, I know you'll have lots of good ideas of what businesses can do. But, my take on it is that everyone is so individual in a workplace, right? And a lot of the things that are supportive to autistic employees, AuDHD employees, ADHD employees are really helpful for everyone. So I think what businesses need to do is start investing in better cultures, more communication, management training. All of these things are not like a neurodiversity program or a DEI program. This is just good business. And once you start investing in those things, you bring the best out of every employee. And I'm thinking like from a manager perspective, your job isn't to like do the task necessarily. It is to remove barriers from your team and to empower your team. And for every single person on your team, that's going to look different. And maybe day to day, maybe just in general, no matter who they are. So I think taking that approach to business is kind of the answer here. It's, you know, people first, and the business, the ROI will follow no matter what your team looks like.
I was gonna say, Abigayle, to sort of add to that, more barriers removed to increase neurodivergent managers as well. Because if we can get more neurodivergent people, employees in leadership positions, that's going to change the dynamic of the workplace in addition to that.
100%. And I guarantee you the neurodivergent managers are the ones already doing this. So.
Oh, absolutely. They're working. Yes. Yeah. They talk about that extra strain that they're taking on. Yeah. You know, the survey also notes that autistic feedback is really basically gathering operational intelligence, which I love how you framed that. Wonder if you could just sort of, expand upon that a little bit.
Like actionable, like tell me what you want me to do with it. Like, don't just tell me like, oh, okay, do better. Okay. What is that? Like,
yeah,
okay.
It's too vague. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too vague, and tell us, in that moment, like when something goes wrong or something needs to be fixed, not in my performance review 6 months later, right? Like you got to make it mean something to me, because I'll forget like that's gone. Like yesterday's gone. I got nothing. I don't know what happened yesterday. But looking at it when we respond, honestly, whether it be like, I don't understand that, or Abby and I joke all the time. It's like, I listen to other people's point of view. I'm just right. So like, it's, it's just how it should be. But take that, and we have a great relationship, we've built that over the last 3 years, and I couldn't ask for a better supervisor. But feedback from us about what's happening and what organizations really should be paying attention to. Like we really notice things.
Yeah.
That pattern recognition, I can tell you a system failure, a system thing, in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Are there environmental problems? Okay, well, I know that we just built this new space, but it's all open and I can see everything, and there's a light over there, and okay, that's yeah.
Sorry, like canary in the coal mine situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Might be autistic employees will likely be the first people to notice something, which is maybe why you should go to them first, right? Because eventually this is going to impact everyone.
Yeah.
But getting the feedback on what communication isn't working, maybe the layout isn't working, or the meeting style isn't working. Everyone's feeling it, and it's impacting everyone. It might be impacting that person a little bit more. So, they're the best source to go to say like, hey, what can we improve upon, or what is working?
Yeah.
Kind of build your organization around that. I think it's a great tactic.
Yeah, I'll in fact note there that Dr. Ludmila Preslova, an autistic doctor and advocate, wrote the book, the Canary Code. I have it to my left here. She has said that autistic employees are the modern day canary in the coal mine, and we need to be listening to that feedback regularly. So I think this sort of reinforces a lot of that.
Yeah. It's really like precise, actionable, or what is good, like what can make things go so much better. And it's, that actionable organizational intelligence.
The study Inside the Autistic Workforce is available now from Next for Autism, and it was in partnership with global research firm Sego. The survey was done in 3 different phases, and the questions were designed by neurodivergent individuals. The full report is linked in the description below, and very much worth your time. I found it absolutely fascinating to read and really affirming in a lot of different ways. So if you're someone who's navigating through the workplace, or you're looking to sort of understand a little bit more, or if you're managing someone who's in the workforce, or you are a neurodivergent manager, be sure to check out this report for a lot of helpful information, especially if you're in HR or employee resource groups. Next for Autism runs a national grants program for nonprofits serving autistic adults, but the deadline for their application is May 22nd, 2026, time of recording. So if you're seeing this before or on that date, you'll want to hurry to get your application in. Or if you know somebody or a nonprofit that you would like to nominate, be sure to let them know as well. Candi and Abigayle noted that they are especially looking for autistic-led organizations and projects that center on lived experience. Check out the links in the description below. My thanks to Candi Weaver-Dowds and Abigayle Jayroe for their time and especially for the research that this study produced. It is absolutely going to help a lot of people in the workplace. Let me know in the comments below what your experience is and does it match up with what we talked about here and what the research study found. I'm curious about that. And what do you need your employers to know more about your experience at work? And as always, be sure to like and subscribe because it really does help my channel grow and it helps my videos and our content reach more people and help more people in the workplace as well. And be sure to check out some of the other videos while you're here. Thanks for watching.